Good morning, Legacy School. This is Year 7 History, Lesson 5, Part 2. We are going to be talking about sources of evidence, and we will be able to express what is meant by significance after this lesson. And we will also see that there are reasons and consequences of every event. All right, so we already talked about sources of evidence. Okay? You know that historians look at sources of evidence and they tell us what they understand through these sources. They look at, we already mentioned, books that come from that time, photographs that come from that time, houses, buildings that come from that time that they are studying. And in our case, you can take a look at these pictures. I'm sure you all guessed by now that these are pictures of Pompeii. Pompeii is a small, at that time it was quite a big settlement close to Naples, in the south of Naples, southern part of Italy. And you can see in these pictures the Mount Vesuvius at the back, right? You remember the story in AD 79, the Mount Vesuvius erupted and covered Pompeii with volcanic ash, which means that apart from the fact that unfortunately almost 20,000 people died, this volcanic ash completely preserved houses, roads, the amphitheater that you can see here in one of the pictures. And lots of people died after they were covered, their bodies were covered with volcanic ash. Their bodies disintegrated, and when the historians found this place, they found these hollow spaces in the ground. They filled them in with plaster, and you can see in the bottom picture, you can see this cast of a dead person who died in this position. So this gives historians valuable information about what happened, and we can understand how these people died, what was their last hour of their life before during this volcanic eruption. So all these are sources of evidence. We have buildings, we have roads, okay? We have the casts of dead bodies. We may also have the diaries or the notes written by people who lived at that time, who wrote down what happened in Pompeii. So we have loads of different sources that as historians we can study and we can understand what happened. Okay, now when we talk about history, we always talk about significance, importance. Okay, is this important? Is this person important? Is that event important? Now, if you take a look at the eruption of the Mount Vesuvius, was it an important event? Was it significant? Yes, of course it was, right? Because it influenced the people. It killed thousands of people. It probably made loads of people sick for a very long time. It probably made people not want to come to this area or build houses close to the Mount Vesuvius for a very long time. Okay, and of course it also helped historians because this volcanic ash preserved the whole city. That would have, maybe we would not have even the ruins of that city, but because it was covered by volcanic ash, it preserved a piece of history for archaeologists. So we have a very exact picture of their life, okay, because of the eruption of the Mount Vesuvius. Now, do you think that the eruption of Mount Vesuvius influenced the history of the rest of the world? Well, you might say that, well, it was an important event in Italy, but it didn't really affect the life of French people or the people in England, because they were just way too far from Mount Vesuvius. Yes, of course. Certain events are very important for some people and not so important for others. Certain events are important for everyone all around the world. Okay, let's talk a little bit about that. Okay, so who are significant people in history? What are significant events in history. Now, I thought about a few people whom you might know or you have heard about. Like, for example, Winston Churchill, UK's Prime Minister during the Second World War. Emily Davison, you studied about her. She was fighting for women's voting rights. Alexander Fleming discovered penicillin, the first antibiotic. John Logie Baird, he was the inventor of the first television. Okay, or John Lennon, he was a musician, a very, very influential musician of the Beatles in Liverpool. Mahatma Gandhi, you learned about him. He was an Indian lawyer and anti-colonial nationalist. Okay, the Prophet Muhammad, okay, who influenced the lives of millions and millions of people and continues to influence. Or Gautama Buddha, he was the founder of Buddhism. He was a real person, okay, and he created a philosophy that is until now the religion of many, or the first faith, the most important faith of many Southeast Asian nations. So what makes these people significant? Because they are all significant, okay? Maybe some of them are more important for you personally, some of them are less important for you, but they are all important people in history. Now, what makes them significant? Now, if you think about it, then what makes a person important is that people who lived at that time, they thought that these people were important. Or these people influenced people's lives. Okay, so they taught something valuable to other people. They changed things, okay, and they made people's lives different. Maybe they helped them, they made their lives better. Okay? Or they created a long-time change. They created a long-time effect with their work. They did something, and you can see the effect of it until now. Okay, so what are significant events in history? Now, I wrote down a couple of very significant, very important events in the 20th century and our 21st century. So, for example, the Nazi Party winning the federal elections in Germany in 1933, or the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The end of the British Empire, well, debated. Was it 1997 when Hong Kong went back to China? Debatable. The destruction of the World Trade Center in New York in 2001, or electing Barack Obama as the 44th president of the US in 2008. Was it? It was, right? A significant event. And what about the discovering of the coronavirus in China in 2020? Now, I believe that all of us agree that all these events are very important, okay? Because they influenced lives of people, usually not just one country, but a whole region or a whole continent. Every single one of these events will always be talked about in the future. Okay, when they look back on the 20th century and the 21st century, these events will always be important events because they had very important consequences, or they had very important results in the future. All right? So what I would like you to pay attention to as the last thing, every event has a reason and a consequence. So something happens for a reason. And when something happens, it has a result. So I would like to show you how that works. Okay, so for example, the Nazi Party winning the elections. The reasons why the Nazi Party won the elections was that Germany was in a terrible economic situation. People were unhappy about the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler's 25-point program that appealed to many, many Germans that came out. These 25 points came out just before that, okay? Farmers should be given land, pensions should be improved, public industries, the electricity and water should be owned by the government. So Hitler came up with quite good points, and the Germans liked it. And many young unemployed were recruited in the army. So it helped the people as well. Hitler was famous and popular because of these reforms. Because of these reforms, the Nazi Party won the elections. And what were the consequences of that? Now, immediately after the elections, Jews were persecuted and their property was confiscated. It was taken away. New laws were written and concentration camps were created, not just for the Jews, but for everyone. Political opponents were silenced. And Germany started occupying other countries like Czechoslovakia and Austria as well. And eventually, as a consequence, the Second World War broke out. So you can see how significant that one event was. But it had a reason why it happened. And it had long-lasting results, consequences. All right? So for your homework, I would like you to write down what makes a person or an event significant. Okay, we mentioned it earlier, and it's written red in your slides. Okay, think about one event in history that you think was significant. Okay, what were the reasons and the consequences of the event? Now you can choose from the list on the slide that I read out for you, or you can choose any event that you want. It's up to you. Don't forget, focus on the reasons and the consequences. Okay, so if you do your research, if you don't know, you can do a research, then see the reasons and see the consequences of that event. So for example, just to make it easier for you to understand, you are going to think about why that event happened. This is the reasons, and what happened as a result of that event. That's the consequences, right? You can write it down or record your answer as a voice message. All right? So this is your homework. Thank you very much for paying attention. I'm looking forward to reading or listening to your input. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.